my yarny friends, I'm Sara Sach, and welcome back to my crochet channel. Today's video, I'm going to show you how to crochet the thick and thirsty washcloth. Why do we call it that, you wonder? Because it's a thick washcloth and it's out of cotton, so it's very absorbent. So it's thick and thirsty. I thought that was a fun, catchy name. The thing about this washcloth is it's stitched in the front loop, the back loop, and the third loop from the front. And don't worry, I show you how to do that. It's not hard at all. Once you get the hang of it, you'll be like, oh, that was super easy. And I love this pattern because it does not have any multiples. It's basic rows of half double crochets with a beginning single and end row there, of course, and around. But your rows across are half double crochets. They make a nice thick stitch because a half double crochet is a denser stitch than a double crochet. Also, because you're stitching in not just the front and back loop, but also that third loop, you're getting a thicker, denser stitch. It doesn't have any holes, except, of course, where we have our single crochet rows. And it's also great for hot pads, pot holders, washcloths, dishcloths, and towels. You can easily adjust this pattern by adding more chains because there isn't a multiple. Add as many as you want. Or you can make it longer by adding as many rows that you want. And you can find out all that information about measurements and things like that, as well as lots of pictures on the blog. And as always, I'll put that blog link down in the notes in that description box for you. Just click that link and it'll take you right over to where the written pattern is at. To stitch up a thick and thirsty dishcloth or washcloth, you're going to need, of course, some cotton yarn. Now I'm using just your basic sugar and cream in this bright green and bright orange. I thought it'd be perfect for fall. And you're going to need about an ounce of two different colors, or if you're making it in one color, say all variegated or something, you're going to need a total of about 2 ounces. It doesn't take very much. This is a small washcloth. Now remember, as I said in the intro, you can make it bigger if you want to. You can make it longer, wider. It's a really simple, easy pattern to adjust because really there aren't any multiples. You just chain as many as you want and do as many rows as you want. And remember, measure as you go so that you get a washcloth, dishcloth, or towel that's the size that you need. All right, we're going to be stitching with our H hook, which is a 5.0 millimeter crochet hook. You need a needle for weaving in ends, and you need a pair of scissors. This is a great project for getting in your cotton yarn stash and putting some fun colors together and make a bunch of washcloths or dishcloths and make something useful from your leftover cotton scraps. We're going to begin with our slip knot, and then we're going to chain 26 chains. I have chained 26 chains. I'm going to place a single crochet in the second chain from the hook. Now I'll place a single crochet in each of those chains, working all the way across. We began in the second chain from the hook, and we're going to stitch one single crochet in each of the chains all the way across our row. We began in the second chain from the hook. We stitched one single crochet in each of those chains across, so I have 25 single crochets. We're going to chain one and turn. And now on row 2, we're going to be stitching half double crochets. So yarn over, go in, pull up a loop, yarn over, and go through all 3 of your loops. And we'll stitch this working all the way across, stitching 1 half double crochet in each of those single crochets across. One half double crochet in each of the single crochets, working all the way across our row. I stitched a half double crochet in each of my stitches across, so I have 25 half double crochets. I chained 1 and I'm going to turn. Now on this row is where we're going to begin that technique of stitching through 3 loops. So when we stitch rows of half double crochets, we normally stitch through these top 2 loops. That's a front and a back loop. And then on the back of your work, you'll see that there's another loop that goes across. We call that the 3rd loop. And so what you're going to do is we're still stitching half double crochets. So yarn over, go through these 2 loops, and then also go through that 3rd loop. Yarn over and pull your loop through. Yarn over and go through all 3. So you're still stitching a half double crochet. You're just placing it in a little bit different spot. Yarn over. Here's my 2 loops on the top and then that 3rd loop on the back. And then just finish your half double crochet. This is where we get that thick and thirsty, because it's cotton, so it's absorbent, washcloth or dishcloth. And again, this pattern works great for working in the kitchen, working in the bathroom, anything you want to clean that you need a thick towel. And also, as I stated earlier, it makes a great hot pad because you don't have to double make 2 and put them together. This makes it nice and thick. All right, now we're going to stitch this row going through those 3 loops. And then we'll be changing colors. And I like to change colors every 2 rows on this because it puts your trailing of your yarn all on one side. But also, when you change colors, you can really see where you've put those stitches. And at first, when you do this, it's going to feel a little bit clumsy. But once you get going, you'll see it's not clumsy at all. You just have to get used to it and get your rhythm. All right, so we're stitching a half double crochet going through 3 loops. The front, the back, and what's called the 3rd loop on the back side. This is not the thermal stitch. It's a little bit different because it lays just a little bit flatter doing it this way. But you're still getting a nice thick fabric that you can use for lots of different things. All right, see how nice and snug that is? All right, so I'm going to finish this row, and then when we come back in, we're going to change colors. I completed row 3, stitching through all 3 of those loops. This is how it should look on the back of your work. You can see those stitches coming down. I'm not going to chain 1 because I'm going to bring in my color 2. There we go. And then I'll chain 1 after I've brought my color in. Snug that down, snug the orange one down, and turn my work. And this is how it will look on the front. All right, I wanted to change colors here because I want you to see how it looks, and you'll be able to see a little bit better with a change in color. All right, so we're going to yarn over. We're going to go in that first stitch, go through both the front and back loop, and then we find that 3rd loop on the back. Make sure you grab the right string. I almost grabbed the wrong one. There we go. That first one's a little bit clumsy, so we're going to pull that through gently and then finish off our half double crochet. Snug that down. That first one on each row, until you get used to it, is a little bit clumsy. Okay, so yarn over. We'll go to the next stitch, go through the 2 loops, and go through that 3rd loop. And this is where you don't want to stitch too tightly, or you'll have a little bit of trouble finding that 3rd loop if it's too snug. And so you want to make sure you're not stitching your gauge or your tension too tightly here. And if you're someone who does, you might want to go up a half a hook size or a hook size, depending on, you know, how tightly that you stitch. If you're someone who stitches super duper tight, we're using an H, just go up to an I, and that might help you out just a little bit in finding those stitches. Yarn over, go through those 2 top loops and that 3rd loop, front loop, back loop, 3rd loop, and finish your half double crochet. And we'll continue to repeat this across. But I want to take a look here so you can see how it looks, because it's easier to see when you've changed colors. Okay, so here we've stitched through those loops, and this is what it looks like on the front. When you turn it over on the back, you can see those loops where we stitched over them, and it makes kind of a longer stitch. These 2 are a little bit loose. I probably need to snug those up a little bit. And the more you do this as you stitch your row, the more practice you'll get in, and you'll get better at it. And I just really love using this, especially with the half double crochet, because you're still getting a nice tight texture, but it's also thick, and you don't have those holes in between, because even with a half double crochet, you can sometimes get a hole. And I just really love the way this looks. Okay, the hardest part is just the beginning of each row, finding that 3rd loop on your first stitch. But once you get that down, you'll have it. All right, so I'm going to continue working across this row, stitching half double crochets, stitching through the front, the back, and the 3rd loop. So I completed row 4, stitching half double crochets, going through those 3 loops, chain 1, and turn. And now we're just going to repeat what we just did. So yarn over, go through those first 2 loops, and then that 3rd loop, yarn over, pull up your loop, yarn over, and go through all 3. And now we're just going to stitch half double crochets in each of our half double crochets, working in those 3 loops, front and back, and that 3rd loop on the back. And we'll stitch all the way across for row 5. So we're just repeating on row 5 what we did on row 4. I completed row 5, again stitching half double crochets through the front loop, the back loop, and the 3rd loop. And I just really love the way that it looks when you change colors. All right, so what I'm going to do now for row 6 is we're not going to chain 1. We're going to bring in our orange yarn that we left attached, because we're trailing it up the side, because we'll be coming back through and stitching a trim. All right, so now I'm going to chain 1 and turn my work. And we'll just get those strings all out of the way. And now we're just going to repeat what we did on row 4 and 5 on row 6 and 7. So yarn over, go through those 2 loops, and then that 3rd loop with your hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, and yarn over and go through all 3 loops. Half double crochets in each of the half double crochets, stitching through those 3 loops. And remember, if you're stitching too tightly and cannot find that 3rd loop, then you might need to go up a hook size, because we all stitch differently, some tighter and some looser. All right? And the truth is, if your washcloth comes out to say 8.5 inches or 9.5 inches, it's totally okay. Unless you want it to be perfectly 9 by 9, and then you can check your gauge and adjust accordingly. I want to show you when I'm stitching in these 3 loops, I kind of hold it up like this. I yarn over, I go through those 2 loops, and then I sort of bend it back and find that 3rd loop, yarn over and pull it through. That's why you kind of see me go like that, and then find that 3rd loop. I find that makes it go just a little bit quicker and a little bit less clumsy. All right, so what we're going to do for row 6 and row 7 is repeat row 4 and row 5 only in the orange or color 1. I completed those 2 rows in color 1, row 6 and row 7, exactly the same way that I did row 4 and row 5. And so what you're going to do is you're going to continue to repeat row 4 through row 7 4 more times. And you're alternating your colors from color 2 and 1 every 2 rows. And that will bring you up through row 23. So you're repeating row 4, 5, 6, and 7 4 more times. So I repeated those rows, doing 2 green, 2 orange, all the way up. This brings us to row 23, all stitched in that 3rd loop, alternating every 2 rows. So now what we're going to do is we're going to chain 1. We want to have that single crochet edge up here we began with down here. All right, so we'll turn our work, and we're not going to stitch through the 3rd loop anymore, just the regular front and back loops. So we're just going to stitch 1 single crochet in each of those half double crochets across. For this row. And I think you'll notice once you've stitched up through row 23 how thick this is. It really is a really nice thick washcloth. So I'm going to continue stitching 1 single crochet in each of my half double crochets across. I stitched 1 single crochet in each of my half double crochets across. We're going to go ahead and cut our yarn and tie that off. Now we're going to come back over here where our green is, and we're going to bring that back in with the chain 1 there, and we're going to go all the way around all 4 sides of our washcloth, and we're going to evenly single crochet with the green. Okay, and when you're doing this, when you get to the corner, you want to make sure that you stitch a single crochet, chain 1, and single crochet in that corner. That's going to help it have a nice rounded corner and not be too bunchy. Now on the top row, of course, we can just stitch a single crochet in each of our single crochets. That is super easy. So we'll do that. 1 single crochet in each of those single crochets across. I single crocheted in each of those single crochets across the top. That brings me to the corner. Single crochet, chain 1, and single crochet in that corner. And now we're just going to evenly single crochet down the side of our washcloth. And the key to getting a nice and neat look is to try to stitch in the sides of those stitches and not the holes. That'll keep it from gaping. There is not a set number of stitches. You just have to kind of eyeball it. Don't make them too bunchy, but don't make them too far apart either. Alright, so I'm just going to work down the side of this washcloth, evenly stitching single crochets. I evenly stitched down that side. That brings me to the bottom of my washcloth. There's my single crochet, chain 1, and single crochet. And now I'm just going to stitch a single crochet in each of those beginning chains. Right across the bottom, single crochet in each of those beginning chain stitches. So I stitched across the bottom, single crochets, and this brings us to our last side. And this is the side where we carried all of our yarn on the side. So we want to make sure when we stitch our single crochets evenly that we're stitching around those where we trailed our yarn. Don't forget to add your single crochet, chain 1, single crochet in that last corner. Alright, so I'm going to go around where I trailed those yarns up, and that'll keep those from getting caught on anything or coming undone. Working back up to where we started. And see, I stitched over those trailing yarns. It looks nice and neat. And I'll finish this up, and then of course I've got a little bit of weaving in to do where we joined our yarns in. I stitched those single crochets up the side, and you can see you cannot see where we trailed those yarns up. We'll join to that single crochet where we started. Cut our yarn. And then we'll just pull that to the back and weave that in to the back. And that gives us a nice appearance. Okay, so I have some weaving in to do. And I'll get on that and my washcloth will be ready for me to use. So I've tidied up the ends on my Thick and Thirsty washcloth, and it's ready for me to use it for doing the dishes. And again, wanted to show you just how thick this is. And I love the effect of how the striping works. Super pretty and super useful. And again, get in your leftover cotton scraps and make a bunch of these. You'll be glad you did because they're thick and thirsty.